Start trading crypto today. Sign up for our step-by-step video series to get set up with the best trading tools, start analyzing charts, enter and exit a trade properly, and most importantly, see if crypto trading is right for you. Join us at bitlabacademy.com.
Welcome to Rice TV X. You've just tuned in for the latest transmission of Stranger Than Fiction. On today's show, I am joined by a very special guest, Dr. Frederick Graves. He is the founder of Jurisdictionary and HowToWinInCourt.com. His mission statement is to promote peace and prosperity through public understanding of the rule of law and the principles and practices of due process. It was Alphonse Fagiolo who introduced me to the website HowToWinInCourt.com. So I wanted to invite Dr. Graves on so I can learn more about him, his work, and how he's helping to educate and empower people in the realm of law. Before we get into it, visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. You will also find my various social media links and more. You can also find Rice TVX on Odyssey and Library, where I have a full catalog of my videos, post up extra content, and share other appearances. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. I will include links in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything shared on today's video. All right, joining me on today's show is a very special guest. Today, I am joined by Dr. Frederick Graves. He is the founder of HowToWinInCourt.com and Jurisdictionary. Dr. Frederick Graves, welcome to Rice TVX. How are you doing, my friend?
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the conversation. I did have the opportunity to speak with you privately to get a little bit more insight as to who you are, what you're doing, and what you want to do as far as helping people. And I really commend you on that. I want to let people know also that everything that we talk about on today's show will be linked down below in the video description. If you're interested in taking any of the courses that are available or the course that is available on HowToWinInCourt.com, I encourage you to use my referral link. That's going to be down below in the video description, and it's also going to be in the pinned comment. And that's a way that you can support my channel as well as empowering and educating yourself. So, Dr. Graves, for people who might be unfamiliar with you, do you mind giving a quick introduction as to who you are?
Well, let's see. Ocean navigator, radio man second class. I had a private airplane one time, a third owner, and spent a lot of time on the water sailing. Ran a fishing boat out of Key West, ran a ferry boat across the Chesapeake Bay. And then I bumped into a very nice man who changed my life. He was building a 30-foot catamaran up in New Jersey, and I was building a 33-foot double-ended gaff rig ketch. I didn't have any masts when I pulled into this Shark River in New Jersey and met this young man who had not yet gone to college. And he went to college, went to law school. We were friends. We went sailing for years and years and did music and things. And after he became a lawyer, he said, well, why don't you at least take the LSAT, the law school aptitude test? I said, well, why not? I'll do it. So I did it and ended up scoring very highly. And I was teaching in a private Christian school in Orlando at the time. And I told him, I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll apply to one law school, no more, just one. If they accept me, I'll go to law school. If they don't, I'll continue to teach in this private Christian school here in Orlando till I die. Mm-hmm. And that was the deal. And the law school, I think stupidly, and feel pretty sure that in hindsight, they wish they had never, ever, ever allowed me to go to law school. Because all these years, I have been fighting to try to teach people what the bar has been hiding from us, all of us, hiding the truth of how simple and how easy it is to understand things like the rules of evidence and what objections are, what they really are. You know, what a cause of action is, things that I can teach a third grader in an afternoon, a lot of it. And why has this been kept from us? And if you don't mind, I'll tell you that actually a citation in the Bible. Remember, I told you I was teaching in a Christian school. I know a little bit about the Bible, and in the book that Luke wrote, in chapter 11, verse 52, we read, "Woe to you, lawyers!" But it doesn't stop there. I mean, we've heard that. Woe to you, lawyers! And Shakespeare said, "Let's kill all the lawyers." That'll be the first thing we do. But really, that sentence goes on in Luke 11:52. Because what it actually says is, "Woe to you lawyers, for you've hidden the keys of knowledge." I take that very seriously. And I've been a member of the bar for 36 years. And if anybody wants to criticize the bar, I feel like I have a right to criticize the bar. I've paid my dues, and they can't get rid of me.
Well, Dr. Graves, one, I appreciate you explaining that. And you're obviously a very wise and funny gentleman. You said that you're a member of the Bar Association. And I'm sure that's going to trigger some people who are going to be watching this show, because I do study and research law, gotten into the legal fiction. And I know there's a lot of things within that realm that you don't agree with, which we'll get to. I definitely want to kind of get your opinion on those things in the latter part of the conversation. But with that being said, you're going to have a lot of people watching this that are going to be under the assumption that there is no such thing as a good attorney. And you might agree with that in some ways, but
I do in some ways.
I guess the first question I would ask you, as somebody who took the bar exam and is an attorney and on a professional bar, something that me and you talked about privately was what the word bar means. Because there's a lot of assumption. I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth right now. A lot of people are thinking what I want to say, but what does the Bar Association mean and stand for?
There's an area of the courtroom where a witness is allowed to go when he's called, where a party is allowed to go if he's a party to the lawsuit. He's got a right to participate. But if you're just an audience, you have to sit back in the part that we call the gallery. You can't come up past that railing in the front. But the way that this all came, you know, this people have the craziest ideas. You know, I hate to say this again, but I will say it. I've said it before publicly. I've asked people to come to my hometown and meet me in the street, and if they want to tell me I took an oath to the Queen of England, that never happened.
Right.
That would never happen. I had a friend who was a 4-star Marine Corps general, and no, we're not taking an oath to anybody but Almighty God.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that people say, the Queen or the Crown Incorporated, the City of London. Did you make an oath to the City of London, sir?
I don't. If I did, I should be horsewhipped.
Okay, so
Okay.
I guess you're saying no.
No, it did not happen.
So
and it would not happen. And I think it's sad that there's so much darkness in the world and people believe things that aren't true. And it just gets in the way of them learning things that they could learn. And that's why you have me on today. It gets in the way of people learning things they could learn so they can actually make a difference and make the world a better place for everybody, instead of believing all this nonsense, this hateful, ugly, anti-everything nonsense. Why don't we just learn how to take a deposition, learn what it means to be under oath. And it's not rocket science. But if we continue to believe all these things that aren't true, then we're never going to make much progress. And I don't know, I'm maybe going off on a tangent.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I just wanted to set the idea that, that you are an attorney, you took the bar exam, you're saying that you didn't make an oath to the Queen, to the City of London, to the Crown Incorporated.
No, nor to the bar, nor to the American Bar Association. I never even joined. I didn't take an oath to anybody. I swore that I took an oath in front of a judge one time where I said, I will keep my client's secret. I will do my best. I will try to obey the law. I will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Florida. And then I said it this way. I said, so help me, God. That's how I said it. It wasn't so help me, God. It was so help me, God. And I believe God has helped me. And I believe that God's let me help others. And I want to keep doing that and hopefully get some more people to do it so that when I do finally stop breathing, there'll be other people pushing this mission that seems to me it's moral imperative. We've got to get America to understand that we have power, we have rights. If we don't know how to enforce the rights, then what good are the promises that we are made from these various official documents telling us we've got rights when you have to mortgage the home, or sell your fishing boat to make enough money to pay a lawyer who may or may not be afraid of the judge and won't stand up and fight for you, and you don't know how to control him because you don't know what he's supposed to be doing. And am I just running on and on, sir?
No, not at all. Not at all. And one thing is, I appreciate your wisdom. I mean, something that comes with age is the fact that you have experienced a lot in life. And I've been trying to take time to interview older individuals so that we can keep a lot of things intact as far as what took place and get a different perspective than what history has been teaching us. Because that's one thing that I'll say about you, Dr. Graves, is that, just talking with you, I can tell that you are genuinely concerned with the future of our nation, America, that I look at you as being a patriotic individual, even though, and just because you don't agree with some of the things in the legal fiction space, or you may actually have information to just prove it completely false, doesn't dismiss what you're doing. And that's where I want people to really pay attention to the things that you have to say and what you're teaching in the course. Because I find it interesting that we have an attorney, somebody who took the bar exam, who is now teaching a course, how to win in court with or without a lawyer, and providing this education for what I can see are spiritual reasons. Because I look at all this as being spiritual warfare anyways. If you want to get down to the common denominator of everything, it all comes down to spiritual warfare. So I get what you're doing. I love the mission statement to promote peace and prosperity through public understanding of the rule of law and the principles and practices of due process. So do you mind kind of going into a little bit more of what inspired you to want to do howtowinincourt.com and continue doing that in an age where you should probably be retired and enjoying life versus on a mission?
Well, wow. Well, okay. Here we go. Well, where do I begin? I lived in a little 25-foot sailboat for 2.5 years. No air conditioning, no car. I was lucky if I could borrow somebody's bicycle. And I always wanted to be a writer. It's how I wanted to make my way. And I always thought there must be something out there worth writing about. And I wrote for a newspaper after I got my bachelor's degree. Wrote for a newspaper. I built a 33-foot double ender. I mentioned that before. And I had books. Didn't have a television. So how do you entertain yourself? You entertain yourself the way people did 300 years ago with books.
Right.
So I had my grandfather, this long story, but I'll go for it. Grandfather, his dad fell out of a tree when he was about 8 years old or so. And he had to take care of his mother and 3 or 4 siblings. And he taught me a bunch of things. And one thing he did, he later on was extremely successful, never went to college, never finished high school, but he read the Harvard classics. And so I was fortunate enough to have the ability to get a handful of Harvard classics and read them. So I read Franklin. Every young man should be required to read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. and I read Woolman and William Penn and Adams and Payne and all these people who had this idea. I mean, lots and lots of books, because I lived in the 25-footer for 2.5 years. Then I lived in the 33-footer for almost 6 years. That's 8.5 years of no television. So there's nothing special about me, except that I was forced into this situation where I ended up reading books that weren't trash. And out of it all, it became apparent to me that this struggle of mankind, here we go, going to get spiritual on you now.
It's all right. Well, I want it. Bring it, sir.
All right, bring it, huh? That from the time of the caveman, there have been people who have wanted to figure out, well, how can we organize ourselves so that we can protect ourselves from these saber-toothed tigers and these big, huge guys that come over the hill every once in a while with their clubs and take our women away and beat our children or eat our children. How are we going to deal with this? So there was always the idea that someday we would all figure out how to have government. Really hard to get along without it. I know there's people out there with very small brains that think that we'd all be better off if we didn't have government. And last time I went to the grocery store and bought a loaf of bread I did not bake, I kind of thought it was a pretty cool idea to have something that would keep us all in order.
Right.
But see, from the very beginning, people dreamed of that. And then people like William Penn said things like this, that this republic was a holy experiment, Holy. And men who were true men, George Washington, his picture's up here. I don't know if you can see it, right? Oh, there's right there he is.
Very little. There's no way I could make that out.
There he is. There he is. George Washington, a truly great man. And he called it the grand experiment. And they understood that it was something that was needful. All of that same time, there have been these people that Charles Dickens wrote about, for example, and lots of other authors have written about, these people called lawyers who glut on the public ignorance. And they've kept the public in the dark. And we can go back 2,000 years and read what, Luke, the physician, wrote. He said, "Woe to you lawyers, you've hidden the keys of knowledge." And so it seems to me that this ought to be a moral imperative, that we ought to have more people than just me and you and a handful of others who are coming alongside me. Finally, I'm beginning to get people to see this is really real and doable. And no good if it's real, if it's not doable, but it's doable. So the American people begin to realize that this power belongs to us. It was purchased for us by the lives of people like my friend General Walt wept about in my presence that day, telling me about things that were going on that should not have been going on because our nation was tied up with some people who were making decisions for what kind of caliber ammunition could be used and when the flares could go off so that his boys could see the enemy coming, and all this horrible stuff that's been done and that maybe wouldn't have had to be done if people had only been taught what the lawyers have been hiding for 6,000 years. I don't want it to be hidden anymore.
No, and I appreciate that.
They're going to have to shoot me to stop me. I don't care.
I appreciate that. I do. And one of the first way that I had came about hearing about what you were doing was a recommendation on your course from Alphonse Fagiolo. There are other individuals who promote the How to Win in Court.com course, but I wanted to talk to the man who created it. So you mentioned this general who you made a promise to. I don't think that, because you told me about it privately, I don't think that you've mentioned it so far in this conversation. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that story? Because I really
don't mind at all.
I feel like that really kind of set you on the path you're on today.
Well, it was an honor far beyond anything that I would ever in this lifetime ever earn.
I mean, aside from him telling you should take the bar exam, and
well, that was another fellow. That was a fellow that built the 30-foot catamaran in New Jersey.
Okay, I'm sorry, I confused.
Walt, I was teaching 9th grade boys Bible, and General Walt came to the school, and he met me, and later invited me to his home one day, and that's when he sat there, a big-chested fellow, who allegedly spent more time on the American battlefield than any living American at the time. He's passed away now. And he had tears going down his face as he described how horrible it was for him to have to be there and know that his boys were getting all cut up and dying and not getting to go home and be with, Susie or Aunt Martha's apple pie. They gave all that up for you so you could go to court, by golly, so you could go to court and be heard without a lawyer and call witnesses. That's what they died for. And he agreed with me about that. And he sat there and wept. And I can't get over it. And he said these exact words, Frederick, never give up the fight. So I can't give up. And I don't think any of us, once we finally begin to see that our enemy's the darkness. Our enemy's not people. It's people who believe the darkness. That's a problem. We have to get to the darkness through them. But the enemy's really the lies that we believe and the ignorance that we cling to. I mean, what is on earth is wrong with us to just cling to ignorance and hide in the darkness and just refuse to lift a lamp? Lady Liberty in New York Harbor, she's holding a lamp up in the air, and under her arm, she's got a book. It's not just the light, it's the knowledge. But if the knowledge is something that an 8th grader can learn in a weekend, then it seems to me that if we all learn this, and then when we find out about somebody, a lady friend who works all day at a restaurant, she comes home, her children have been taken because an in-law lied about her and told DCS that she was on cocaine or something, and she isn't. I think she needs help. I think people are losing their homes when they made the payments. I think they need help. I think when people get, shoved in the back seat of a squad car with the handcuffs on so tight that it cuts off their circulation so they lose the use of their hands and can't throw a pizza anymore, actually helped that case. We won that case against the sheriff's department. But it's something that every person who hears us today can do. It's not differential calculus. It's something that they should have been told. Everybody should have been taught this before graduating from high school.
That I agree with. I agree with that 100%. And there may be been a time period when in some sort of education, not in public, but in some sort of education curriculum, that they did teach people about these things. I mean, I was told it used to be that the law was posted in the city square where everyone could read it, and even a young individual would be able to fully comprehend what the laws were, so they knew not to break it. And that's one of the interesting things about this. But one of the things that I want to stress to people about this, and again, I mean, if you're interested in signing up and taking the course on howtowinIncourt.com, be sure to use my referral link. It's going to be in the video description and pinned comment, and it's a way that you can support the channel and also support what Dr. Graves is doing as well. I really want to make sure that people are aware that this is really, it's good to have, and I definitely encourage people to get the course, but this is for people that are really dealing with court issues. It's not to create some kind of problem out of nothing. If you're dealing with some sort of court issue, that is where this course will come into effect, from my understanding. Would you agree with that, Dr. Graves?
I would. But let's say, for example, you're the lady the lady who's a waitress, and they took her children away. Okay, well, if you know what this course teaches, you can help that woman. You can't go to court and represent her, although I do think that somewhere down the road, we're going to change the law where a person that knows what he's doing can represent somebody else if somebody else wants that person to represent them instead of a lawyer.
And
let me interject here real quickly. I have known so many lawyers who now, I need to say this, please allow me. Sure. Lawyers that handle contracts, lawyers that handle property deals, lawyers that write wills and trusts. Every one of those people that I've ever known were okay people. But the ones who go to court, an uncanny percentage of those people will lie and cheat and steal and hide the ball to keep you from winning. So I learned how to beat them. I read the rules,
Right.
and I learned how to put them in their place, and people that have my course are learning how to put them in their place. So it's not every lawyer, and it's not even all the lawyers that are litigators, but so many of the litigators, they just do anything on earth to win, and the bar knows this. The bar has a whole section set up to discipline lawyers. That's part of the reason the bar exists, is supposedly to discipline lawyers. The problem is they very seldom discipline a lawyer unless the lawyer steals his client's trust fund and moves to Argentina. So
Right.
that's the fact. But when we know how to hold this lawyer's feet to the fire, not by trying to get him in trouble with the law, that doesn't help us, but making people pay money to you because they did wrong, because they took your kid, and because somebody lied about you and they took your kid. Well, that's an opportunity to make some money. Maybe you don't have to work in the restaurant anymore. But if people think, well, I can't do that, the lawyer wants me to give him, $15,000 up front. And you have to understand, if you give the lawyer $15,000 up front, that's just the beginning. There'll be another 15,000 next month, and it'll go on and on and on until finally you find out that they were afraid to stand up to the judge and do what needed to be done.
Right.
So now it's time for the American public to learn, well, how do you do this? How hard is it to learn? And if what I say is true, it's not hard to learn.
No, and I mean, you've made that, I mean, like talking to you, you've made that very clear, because I was telling you that from my understanding, talking to people like Alphonse Fagiolo and Carl Lentz, that it seems as if we have to go through basically the process that a lawyer goes through without getting the bar exam. And you said that is completely unnecessary, which, I appreciate you saying that. And the other thing too, that, I wanted to get into before we dig into the course a little bit is, and I meant to ask you this earlier, the word bar, because you've mentioned it again a few times. The word bar, a lot of people assume that it means British accreditation registry or something to that effect, registration. I haven't seen anything to fully back that up, and you are a member of the Bar Association. So can you confirm or deny that, and or tell me what the bar actually means and like what the word stands for?
Well, the way I understand it is that my license on the wall, I don't know which one of those things up there on the shelf behind me. I think it's the one to my right. That's a piece of paper signed by members of the Florida Supreme Court that say that I have been admitted to the bar. And the bar is that area in front of the railing. The public has to sit behind the railing because they're not admitted to the bar. I can go up in front of the bar and I can argue in front of the judge. I can bring people in, make them sit in the jury box. I can ask them questions. I can walk around. I can, just like on TV, and I can stick my thumbs under my elbows and act like a big shot, do all that like you see on TV, because the Florida Supreme Court says that it's okay. He knows what he's talking about. He can do this.
But is there an acronym for the word bar? Like, does
I
it
don't know of
stand
it.
for anything?
No,
Because like I was telling you, I thought it was short for barrister.
No, it's the air. Well, maybe barrister comes from the same thing, but it's that area between the railing and the bench. That's what it is.
So if you look at a courtroom and you go into a courtroom, you have the chairs where people sit,
right,
and then you have a divider,
right,
which some people say resembles a boat, and that's where they're going into maritime law and they're talking about the French flag, which we'll get into. But once you cross that barrier,
right,
where the attorneys are before the judge would be the bar, because then where the judge is parallel to the judge will be your recorder, if there's a recorder,
right,
a clerk, and things like that are with the judge. So the area in between where the people sit and where the judge sits is called the bar, that entire area. And we're not allowed to go until it's our turn for our case to be heard. And then we're very limited in our capacity of what we can do, because you just can't walk up to the judge.
Well, right. In fact, it reminds me of Tennyson wrote a poem, Crossing the Bar. And of course, what he's talking about is a bar outside the harbor. but you can think of it the same way. So you're outside the bar. I did a lot of sailing. You're outside the bar. To get into the harbor, you got to cross the bar. And so that's what I believe it is. As far as the British accreditation regency nonsense, it's utter nonsense. And if somebody wants to come to me here in Bay City, Michigan, meet me in the street, I will do my best to just beat the living. Okay, if they accuse me of that, because I didn't take an oath to anybody.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be exerting yourself in that kind of physical manner at this point in your life.
I don't want to. Believe at my age, I don't want to. But the point is that I've been accused of being the enemy, and I don't like it because I'm definitely doing all I can to try to help people.
From a legal perspective, I'm trying to set precedents here that you're not the enemy, from what I can tell. And I told you personally, and I've mentioned this in videos too, that I do want to talk to more attorneys, people who have taken a bar exam. I'd like to talk to judges. But one thing that I will say based off what you said is that it's really interesting how we have all this language that revolves around water, and then you have people wanting to combine the maritime aspects into things. So I can see where somebody with imaginations would feel that way. Now, when we talked privately, I had asked you how our courts operate, because I felt as if when we started our nation, we had and correct me, that I understood that we had common law courts, and then somewhere around the time period of after the Civil War, during the reconstruction of our nation, the federal government took over. We didn't actually have a reconstruction of the republic. It was more like the democracy took over Washington, D.C. And then I understood it to be that form of law, of common law, to change to equitable law. And then somewhere in the 30s, 1933, 1935, changes to a statutory law, which some people in the legal fiction space say is just another word for law merchant, commerce law, maritime admiralty law. So what kind of law operates in the United States judicial system?
Well, it's common law. It's statutory law. It could be a local ordinance in your community. But common law is simply law that's made by judges who sign documents and making decisions on appellate cases.
Setting precedents.
Well, yeah, but it's the law. So, for a while, Roe versus Wade was the law. Now it's not the law. We don't know what's going to happen with all of that, and don't want to get into that argument. But, there's New York Times versus Sullivan was a case that came up some years ago. I think it was over an Alabama football coach, and who you could slander and who you can't slander. That's a common law principle. I mean, the whole world of contracts is common law, but there is some statutory law. I mean, one of those is the statute of frauds, which says, okay, if you want to bring your case to court, then it's got to either be in writing or it has to be within a certain parameter. You can't come into court and say, well, he promised me $15,000 if I would dance a jig. I danced the jig, he wouldn't pay me. The court's not going to hear that unless it's in writing. But there are other times when the court will hear it without it being in writing if it's within the statute of frauds. So the statute modifies the common law of contracts in a way that's totally reasonable. But the idea that somebody's out to get us, if anybody's out to get us, it's the boogeyman. It's the lies that people believe. That's what's out to get us. And we've got legal education in this country, in the law schools, is failing. The dean of the University of Florida Law School actually came and spoke to a group of lawyers not too long ago. I was there. And the first words out of his mouth after he was introduced, he said, legal education in this country is failing. Those are his words. And we've got lawyers that are being turned loose on the public that don't have a clue what they're doing, and people are being victimized.
Right.
And it's awesome. Very early in my career, when one of my first hearings that I went to, the judge looked at me. And of course, I was almost as old as the judges at that point. I was in my early 40s. And he said, "Don't you lawyers ever read the rules?" And so I decided, well, maybe that'd be a good idea. So I read the rules, and it all began to be so simple to me. My background's in education. My BS is in education. So I figured, what the heck, I can teach this to people. So in 1997, I started doing it.
When you said rules, are you talking about the rules of civil procedure?
Rules of civil procedure, rules of criminal procedure, rules of appellate procedure.
There's various procedures.
Rules of evidence. They're just rules that anybody can learn. They're not hard.
What is...
Let me jump in real quick. Every criminal case, every civil case or criminal case in the federal court, the rules of evidence, 19 pages. That ought to shock people. Why weren't we told? Uncle Joe's in prison for 20 years because some moron took his money, said, "Oh yeah, we can win this case. No problem. I'll have you, I'll have you out of jail any day now." And now he's still in prison for 20 years because the lawyer didn't have a clue what he was doing.
Right.
That's not right.
No.
But the only way we're not going to change the bar. They're not going to do this because of what I want to do. But when the American people say, "Excuse us, we are sick and tired of being kept in the dark. We are tired of being conned by you people, and we want to know what is the truth. What is hearsay?" I mean, come on, why shouldn't we know what hearsay is from the standpoint of the court? We think we know what it means. Lay people do.
You mean like a legal
guy works on motors all day?
Like a legal definition of the word, you mean?
It's an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of what it says. That's all it is. We shouldn't allow people to come into court and put you in jail because, well, Bill said he did it. Well, where's Bill? Bring Bill in. Let Bill tell the court that whatever. Well, people are going to prison over this, and judges are allowing it to happen. And the only way to stop it is public legal education. That's my game.
So with common law, I was understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that common law has to deal with harming an individual or harming someone else. There has to be a victim.
No.
Okay, because that's the way I've looked with a lot of our statutory law. There's victimless crimes.
Well, there are. And let's say, for example, my neighbor across the street wants to store dynamite in his basement. He's not harming me. And unless something happens.
Right, unless there was an accident, God forbid.
Right, and so, there's a law against storing dynamite in your basement. And let's say you're at a theater and you say, "Well, I have First Amendment right. I can yell fire. I've got a right to yell fire." No, you don't have that right. But the people are, see, here's the deal. I spent 3 years of my life, over $100,000 of money that I made swinging a hammer and writing articles for magazines. That's you see, and I did all that to learn what America is really all about, which is a handful of principles that are just simply excellent. But we've got a bar organization that's taken over the courts, taken over the law, taken over the legislature, taken over the Congress, and they don't know mud from sand. These people. And the University of Florida dean of the law school said legal education is failing, and I know why. And they're not teaching what they need to be teaching, the fundamentals of juridical reasoning, of just putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4 instead of 7.5.
Right.
And that can change, but it's going to depend on the American people themselves to change it, because we can't expect the bar to do it. We can't expect the churches to do it. We certainly can't expect the media to do it. They're not motivated to do it. So, but the people should be motivated when they take, somebody comes and takes your children because Aunt Martha said you were using cocaine and you weren't. I don't like that. Or somebody
I agree.
Comes along and accuses you of raping somebody or stealing money from the company or whatever, and you didn't do it. And the public defender says, "Well, here's the deal. You can either go to jail for 20 years, you can go to jail for 1.5 years, All you have to do is sign this paper. You can go to jail. And you say, but I didn't do it. Well, it's 20 years or a year and a half. Signs the paper, old man.
No,
I
I
don't
agree.
think that's what America's supposed to be.
No, not our judicial system. No, not at all. And so before we get into like digging into the course a little bit, I got two what I'd like to think are simple questions. I would
Okay.
like for you to tell me what, in your words, from your education and experience, what natural law is, and also what is statutory law. If people
Okay.
want to compare it to the law merchant or the maritime admiralty, can I get your perspective on statutory and natural law?
All right. First, natural law. Natural law is the law that makes apples fall from trees. That's what it is. And whatever you want to believe about God or karma or Krishna or whatever you want to believe, no matter what religion you have or no religion, doesn't matter. The fact that is undeniable that this universe was created in such a way that when you do good, you get good sooner or later, maybe not right away. And when you do bad, you get bad sooner or later. Maybe not right away. Maybe you can get away with bad for a while, but sooner or later it catches up with you because that's how the universe is created. And that is the natural law. The word in Greek is logos, the logos. The logos. The law that rules the universe is not just about holding the stars in space or making atoms behave themselves the way they're supposed to. It's also about nations and people. And as with men, so with nations, and as with nations, so with men, because there's this natural law that rewards good. And we need to get back to this idea, we trust in God. What are we really saying? We're trusting in the reality that decrees if we do bad as an individual or as a nation, we will suffer for it. That's what natural law is from my point of view. And I'll challenge anybody that says, oh, no, it's what the Bible says, or it's what this and Uncle John says, whatever. I haven't got time for those people.
I understand. One of the things that I did want to kind of get your perspective on was, this is used by a lot of our founding fathers. This is Emer de Vattel, who wrote The Law of Nations, which the title is Natural Law and Enlightenment. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you about what natural law was from your perspective, because the law of nations, or the principles of the law of nature, applied to the conduct and affairs of nations and sovereigns, from the French of Monsieur de Vattel.
Yes. And if we try to violate the law of nations, it's just like imagining that you can put a dish of water on the back porch for the dog in February in Michigan and not expect it to turn hard. It's going to turn hard. It's going to freeze in February in Michigan. And it just because that's the way it is. And if we finally begin as a nation and throughout the world begin to wake up to the fact that you don't get away with anything in this lifetime. You just don't. You just don't get away with anything. You think you can, have another drink, it doesn't change anything.
I've had those
times. That's what I think about natural law. Now, statutory law is where you have a legislature, and one of the guys that wants to stay in office forever, and for whatever personal reasons that he has, and he comes up with an idea. Well, I think it'd be a better world if we pass a law that says you can't store dynamite in your basement. So that becomes a statute, and then we would have somebody would challenge that down the road somewhere, and it would go up on appeal. And when it went up on appeal, the appellate court might modify that. They might say, well, it's reasonable for him to have one stick of dynamite if it's not more than 17 and a half inches long and it weighs no more than 78 grams or whatever. So the common law, which is the law of courts, can modify the law of the statutes or just completely wipe out a statute. Say, nope, sorry. And the interesting thing, sir, it's really, I find it amazing that people don't know this. The ultimate authority in this country is not the White House. The ultimate authority in this country is our court system. And when the United States Supreme Court says, boo, it's like, jump and fetch it, because that's it.
Right.
And if they want to tell the Congress of the United States, no, we're not going there, that's it. You may disagree with it. You may think it's all politically motivated, and maybe some of it is, but that's where it is. And the American people don't understand it. and they're allowing it to just run roughshod and change the very concept of morality and what's right and wrong for their children. This can't be permitted to continue. But the only way to change it is for the American people to educate themselves about what law really is. Get away from this British accreditation regency stuff, or that you can have a 1099, or because the government allegedly had a bankruptcy way back when, that now I don't have to pay my parking ticket. Come on. Where is all this crazy stuff coming from? It's not coming from a good place. And if it isn't coming from a good place, it is not going to be good for your children. It is not the kind of world we want to have, allowing people who are completely in the weeds. I cleaned that up for you.
No, I appreciate. Now, one thing that I want to add real quick is you did mention the Roe v. Wade situation, and without even, and this is what I say to people when I'm trying to have an intellectual conversation about current events. Take out what the case is, the subject matter of what the case is about, and look at the ruling of what was done. And from the overturning of this case by the Supreme Court, what I feel that it's done is give the power back to the states, which is what our founding fathers wanted for our Confederation of Nations to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I would. I think you have to look at Eisenstadt versus Baird, which was a case that came before Roe. And then I think you need to read Roe. And when I first read Roe, my hair caught on fire. That's why.
That's why you don't have no more hair?
That's not really what made it fall out. But anyway.
That's a good one, though.
No, but when I read it, it actually said in there, they were trying to make an excuse for it by claiming that the people of ancient Greece used to take their children out and tie them to a rock outside of town and let them die of starvation and dehydration. And that was in the case. And I thought to myself, what's that got to do with anything? This is America. This is not Greece. So what?
Right.
And the reasoning in the case, to use a vernacular term, the reasoning in the case sucks. And back to what you're saying, if the people of New Jersey or Massachusetts or whatever want to have regulations, they should be allowed to have them. And that case was a stretching. Now, whether it's right or wrong, I don't go down that road with people. They want to say, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? What I think is this: learn the rules that make America in the first place. Because, the steel mills, that's only part of it. The steel mills and the barges on the rivers and all that, that's part of America. But without the words, without the rules that make America what it is and constrain the American people to behave themselves in a polite and positive manner, without those rules, we're lost. There's no hope.
Right. No, and I can definitely say that I'm guilty of not, going down and reading, I shouldn't say going down, but I'm just guilty of not reading all the rules, of fully understanding the game. If the United States was a game of Monopoly, which it feels like it is, in order to play the game of Monopoly effectively, you need to understand the rules. And if someone's willing to take the time to read the rules for a game, something that really provides no real value except for entertainment and maybe bringing people together, versus taking the time to read how this nation works, the rules of this game, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But at the same time, Dr. Graves, I believe that our education system, the public education system and stuff, I believe have been also kind of taken over, and there's a conditioning that's being done with the education, because obviously they're not teaching us things that we should know, like the law. They don't, even back when I was going to school, when people actually had checkbooks, they didn't teach about balancing a checkbook. I mean, now obviously some people are like, what the hell are you talking about, a checkbook? I've never heard of these archaic devices that you old people use.
Right.
But let's move on to howtowinincourt.com, because I just want to do it.
Let me jump in one quick thing here.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the games. The official rules of baseball, Major League Baseball. I checked this out. I mean, maybe the books have changed, but last time I checked it out, 125 pages.
Okay.
I mean, there's rules in there. If the first baseman catches the ball while he's falling into the dugout, is it an out? or can he catch the ball? All this, it's all in there. And people that are really big on baseball, they know the rules of baseball, 125 pages. And all I want to know is why do people haven't been told that you can learn what's going on in the court, most of it really, with 19 pages?
Because
What's wrong with this picture?
I didn't think that was possible. As I told you when we talked privately, I thought that I had to basically understand the everything an attorney understands so I can combat an attorney. So you simplify the process, and that's what I appreciate about what you're doing with howtowinincourt.com.
Yeah, really.
So for people, one, there's a free quiz that people can take. I will let people know that I took it, and some of these questions I didn't even understand, didn't comprehend, and I got an F. Just so people know, I got an F on this free quiz, which means I need to take the course. There's also a free flow chart, free tactics, testimonials. There's an About Us section where you can get information about Dr. Graves, his wife, and everything that he's done with that within his life, and a lot of his credentials, additional links if you want to check some of that kind of stuff out, like frederickgraves.com, lamplifters.com, Justice Magazine, American Justice Foundation, Public Legal Education. So I can obviously tell this is something that's really important to you. You're paying for an 800 number with the awesome 866 Law Easy. You started out, a lot of people understood you from the word Jurisdictionary, which people can see. And then you have the howtowinincourt.com. What is Jurisdictionary?
Well, that's where it all started. It was really weird. I was walking on the campus at the law school. I think I was walking on the campus with that fellow that talked me into taking the LSAT.
Okay.
His name's Jim. If he's listening, hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Oh, hi, Jim. And that word came to my mind, Jurisdictionary. I thought it's a strange name, kind of like the word jurisdiction and the word dictionary ran together. And nothing happened with that for years and years. That was 1985 or 86, 85 or 84. And then in 1997, I was trying to do this, and I met a fellow that passed away recently, a dear friend. His name was also Frederick. And he said, we got to get you a website. I said, what's a website? And he began to tell me what it was. And so that name popped into my mind again. So we got Jurisdictionary, and we started just silly stuff, just simple stuff. Did you know that whoever makes a motion has a burden to prove what he alleges? The other side doesn't have a burden to prove it didn't happen. The burden's on the person that's advancing this argument to prove whatever he's arguing. If he can't prove it, he needs to go sit down, go take his game, and go home. Sorry about that, Charlie. Get away from me. But, it amazed me right off the bat when I started telling people like this. And I started getting emails. People wanted me to be on Oprah. I said, that's great. Tell Oprah. Yeah, I definitely want to be on Oprah's program so that she can tell more people that they've been held hostage by an organization that absolutely has made no effort whatsoever to teach anybody much of anything about what justice is, that thing called justice that secures their liberty. And the people out there think that their vote is going to control the government. And I think we pretty much ought to know by now that our vote isn't doing a real good job of controlling the government. But an order from the judge can make the governor in your state sit up and pay attention. Or the president, or
that's happened.
Senator so-and-so who's out of control and wants to force your children to wear an orange hat on Tuesdays. No, we're not doing that. But if we don't learn how to use the courts to control these people, they're going to get what they want. And they're going to advance their elitist ideas about what America's supposed to be and how Americans are supposed to live our lives and how much money we're supposed to spend on gas. They're going to do all this stuff. And they're going to continue with this ridiculous thing called the IRS code until it becomes so complicated that even the smartest bookkeeper and tax efficient person in the world won't understand it. All because they're padding the. No, here I'm going down the wrong road, sir. Just let me go back and say again. The answer is legal education for adults and the children. as quickly as possible.
Now, let me ask you here. Okay, so I've got the website pulled up.
Mm-hmm.
I see that it is $249 for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And then any extra years, if needed, would be $89 per year.
I got to make that clearer. It's $89 if you renew before the last 30 days. The last 30 days, I bump it up $10.
Okay.
I'm trying to encourage people to renew early. But you find that out after you sign up. There'll be a little yellow button that says renew before for $89, and there'll be a date there. So we're not hiding anything, but that's what you find out. You can renew for $89 if you renew early. That's all that is.
And that's where I'm sorry. That's where I was encouraging people to make sure that they're going to be using my referral link in the video description or the pinned comment for this. So you'll get a full year for $249. And with that, I would be assuming, Dr. Graves, that everything here on the left-hand side, everything you need, the evidence rules made easy, the how to make all this information is going to be available with the course.
Click on one of them.
Okay. Let's click on why winning is easy.
There you go.
Okay.
Just fit the parts together.
Nice.
None of it's rocket science.
But all this information that we're seeing here on the left-hand side is information that would be provided within the course.
Those are different. They'll take you to a preview of each and every one of those classes.
Okay. And each and every one of those classes in its full entirety is included with the $249 membership?
It certainly is.
So it's not just one specific course about how to win in court.
Oh, you get it all.
Okay. Well, that's a lot more than I was even thinking. Let's click on why we need this. And then it takes you to the About Us section. I do like the trial of Jesus. So this talks about what happened, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it does.
From a law perspective.
That was actually, let me give this a treat here. Judge Fogel, Harry Fogel. I went to his funeral. Wonderful human being. He taught me how to make motions. And he wrote notes. He used to go around and give these talks. I was president of Christian Legal Society, and he used to go around and give a talk about the trial of Jesus. And when he died, his widow let me have the notes. So I took his notes and I rewrote them for the website, where you can find out about what's the real deal. What actually happened, the part that the church won't teach you about, where you find out Pilate wasn't responsible. It wasn't Pilate, other than Pilate was a pussy and a pushover. But really, it was all about the judge. It was the chief judge of Israel, Caiaphas. And it's all explained in there how Caiaphas broke the law of Israel to put this man to death, that they sought to put him to death. The judges, the chief judges. This is the kind of thing we got to get rid of. The spirit that was in Caiaphas has got to be eradicated from the courtrooms of the United States of America, because General Walt told me I have to keep fighting until we make progress. And you're helping me, sir. Thank you.
We're helping each other. I mean, that's the thing that I try to tell people, is that we're in this together. So the more that we can help each other, the more that we can educate one another, the stronger that we'll be as a collective. And, I have this saying, Dr. Graves, that I try to say because I understand the power of speech and manifestation. And I try to manifest this idea that when enough people take a stand, nothing can stand against the people. And we can peacefully change the world. I have to add that, because YouTube likes to give me strikes and say that I incite violence and riots when I'm all about a peaceful message. But at the same time, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I will break out the whip on the money changers if need be.
Good for you.
If need be.
Need be.
But yeah, definitely don't mistake the kindness for weakness. And I can tell that you're one of those kind of individuals. And I've got so many more questions, but at the same time too, I do want to be respectful of your time, and I want to be respectful of everyone else's time and brain, because I know this is probably a lot of information to take in. Because what I have found, Dr. Graves, and I've heard this from several other people who have podcasts, YouTube channels, anything to that effect, who are studying this area and looking into all the various possibilities. The more that I look into things, the more confused I get. That's kind of where I like the simplicity of what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And I've noticed that the truth is a lot more simpler than it is complicated most of the time.
Mhm.
So I can resonate with that. Um, just kind of real quickly, I mean, again, I'm definitely going to want to do a follow-up with you and kind of dig deeper in some different areas of law with some questions that I have, if you don't mind. But I would like to just kind of briefly talk to you about what Alphonse Fagiolo and others call patriot mythologies, which
Mhm.
would be some of the things like um, a creditor trust account, Seste KV account that people can access, status correction, getting rid of your U.S. citizenship and going to a state national or state citizenship level, the UCC, the special party creditor stuff. What are your thoughts on? Do you find any legitimacy in any of the things that I just mentioned?
Well, in a word, no. Um, it's like the lady that she insisted that she could copyright her name. And if her name was copyrighted, then the police couldn't write her name on a ticket when she stopped. I thought that was about as insane as anything I'd ever heard in my lifetime, but she really believed it. I had another lady some years ago. She lived in Virginia. I do remember this. She had a nice home. She was married, and she was being foreclosed on. And she wanted me to help her to make the argument that because the bank issued the money for her to buy the house in Federal Reserve notes, that that really wasn't money, and therefore she shouldn't have to pay the bank back. And I tried and tried and tried. Oh no, that's she. This
No, but
woman.
there was a court case in the 1960s, and I don't know the case offhand. If somebody can let me know what the case is, I will let you know. But there was a case in the 1960s where a guy won with that argument. I don't know what changed in the process, but
Different facts.
but yeah, it was basically, and it was also in the case the fact that the bank itself didn't actually lend the guy any money. It was all just digits on a screen. There was no actual money involved, like when it came to the deal. I'll send you the information, but no, I've heard the argument that people use that, and it doesn't work in court nowadays. But there
Well,
has been a success in that area that, and maybe you can expand on
well,
why there was success in the future.
if anybody won that, then I will bet you a box of donuts right now that the facts are somewhat different from what this woman who signed a promissory note promising to pay the money back, and she ended up having the house, and she refused to pay the money back. Her husband left her, and then they took the house because she wanted to believe what she learned on the internet instead of learning what the law is and obeying the law. So it's real easy the way I look at it. Then there's people that think, well, that they can be a secured creditor of their own debt. That's a little bit circular. Obviously, if you buy a refrigerator from me and I sell refrigerators, I can file a financing statement with the SEC or the Secretary of State, and now I become a secured creditor. And but for the debtor to file a UCC financing statement so he can be the secured creditor of his own debt. I mean, people invent these things because they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay. They don't want to keep their promises. And if we can't keep our promises, then we might as well, forget about the flag and all that America's supposed to be. It's all supposed to be about we're all supposed. If we're going to make a promise, we ought to keep it, not try to find a way to break it and cheat people and make everybody's mortgage rates go up because we're cheating the banks. That's not right.
Right, but on the same context, just so people can understand too, like you also talked about abolishing or changing the IRS, that you're not a fan, you're not a fan of our form of taxation. So so it's not as if you're cherry picking things. You're very your beliefs are very aligned with everything. So I just wanted, so if people are trying to say no, this guy is a member of the bar association, he is spreading disinformation just so he can get people off track of what is correct, and he's offering this how to win in court course to let people think that what he's saying has a lot more validity when all he's doing is just dismissing all of my years of research. Or if I'm a teacher, he just dismissed all of my teachings and said that I'm null and void, which I feel a lot of the individuals out teaching stuff in this area of what people call, from your perspective, from a law perspective, from an attorney, they call it pseudo law.
Well, it's nonsense, most of it.
Yeah, which is why they call it pseudo law, you know.
Yeah.
But
and it doesn't get you what you want. And then what they do, they complain about it and they say, well, you know, the judges are all corrupt. I couldn't get what I wanted, and what they wanted wasn't lawful. And if we don't want to live in a country under laws, move to Brazil. You know, they got room down there. Go, I'll buy your ticket.
Just after talking to you for a little bit too, and if this is not something that you're interested in, I completely respect it, but I have to ask anyways. If there's a teacher or a group or an individual or something to that effect that is disagreeing with the information that we're talking about, would you be in a position that you would be open to potential civil debate type conversations with individuals with opposing views to explain, or is that something you would rather not waste your energy on?
Well, I can just see it, being a spitting match,
a shitstorm.
Well,
I would try to make it as civil as potentially possible.
We could talk about it, but I come back to thinking about, because I really truly come back to thinking about General Walt and his boys, telling me about the boys that were the gooks were coming. They wrapped their feet with rags so they couldn't hear them coming across the rice paddies. And he wasn't allowed to shoot the flare up until a certain hour when he knew the gooks were there. But the UN said no, and you can't use this particular caliber of ammunition that would allow his boys to shoot the gooks when they were farther out. And they could have fired the flares and shot the gooks while they were flying around farther away. And General Walt's sitting there with tears in his eyes. So I don't have a lot of toleration. I probably would not be a pleasant person if I have to debate with people about absolute nonsense.
Okay, I respect that.
It would just set me off. I don't want to go there.
Okay.
I believe in America, and I believe America is built on the system of laws, much of which needs to be changed. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be altered. It needs to be amended. We need to get judges to change things that are crooked and bad and not fair and not good for our children. But I don't believe in just being anti-government because I don't like what the government's doing. I want to encourage people to understand if you will learn how to control the courts, you can control your government. If you don't want to learn how to control the courts, sit down.
But do you think the governments have gotten out of hand or grown into a monster that it shouldn't be right now?
It definitely has been a monster from the beginning. The founders knew it was going to be a monster.
What about what Thomas Jefferson said in our Declaration of Independence about our right and duty to abolish and recreate a new nation if it doesn't serve we the people?
I don't think we're down to the point where we need a new nation. I think what we need is an educated populace so the populace can use the courts to fix what's broken, one thing at a time.
Well
if
said.
we don't like a particular law, let's fix it instead of just saying, well, we'll just throw the baby out with the bath and then what are we going to go back to? No law, no police, no fire department, no electric power to my home, no nothing. Give me a break.
And you're going to
children. We can't be children anymore, sir. It's time to grow up and put on our big boy pants.
I say that a lot. I say that a lot myself. No, I agree. And if you do want to make change to a law, it's a lot easier from my perspective for us to make that change on a local and state level than it is to do that on a national stage.
Well,
which is where you should appreciate states' rights.
Well, look at Miranda. He was just a little guy. He was in prison.
Yeah.
And he decided, this isn't right. And some people got with him and they went to court.
And now we have Miranda
out of
rights.
that, the Miranda decision came down, and Miranda versus, I don't know, it was Arizona or wherever. And now it's a federally mandated truth based on a common law opinion of an appellate court justice that if you get arrested, you have a right to be told that you have a right to an attorney and all the other rest of them.
You have a right to an attorney. You have a right to remain silent. What you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, sir.
Yes. But that came about because before that, They put you in a room with a bright light and a rubber hose, and they beat the crap out of you until you finally, yeah, okay, I did it. Stop beating on me. We don't allow that anymore. The world was made a little bit better because of Mr. Miranda, who didn't wait and vote till in November.
And
He
you
didn't
said
wait
that
to vote for somebody. He went to court and he got a judge to agree with him that it isn't right. And we need to change the law. Every one of us can change the laws that we don't like, but we can't do it with a vote. We can't do it setting fire to police cars. We can't do it by carrying signs in the street. We do it by going to court. That's how Miranda changed the law. That's how thousands and thousands of people have made the world a better place, by going to court. And the people don't know this because the bar, they hide the truth.
right. And now, I mean, obviously the best thing would be for someone not to do anything that's going to put them in a position to go to court. But if you're going to go to court, you're going to want to know how the game operates. And obviously you want to be effective. So howtowinincourt.com is definitely something I would encourage people to check out, especially if you have ongoing legal situations, if you foresee that you have legal problems that you're going to be having to deal with, if you know that you're going to be in a courtroom. This is definitely something you're going to want. If you want to be able to help your community, your friends, and your family, and you don't have any pending legal cases. I don't have any pending legal cases, but I plan on learning the course so that I can be helpful to my brother and sister. I mean, with the commandments that Jesus left of love God with all your heart and love your brother, and I like to add your sister as you love yourself, then being there for your brother and sister, being able to provide information that they may not be aware of, is one of those ways that we can treat people how we want to be treated.
Amen.
So, yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. I definitely look forward to being able to communicate with you more. And what I might do is if people have, and I really would tell people that are watching this, if you're disagreeing with anything that's being said, then be very logical about that in the comment section. Don't just be rude and say you disagree without any sort of logical reasoning. Otherwise, you're just sharing your thoughts and your opinion. If you want to share some factual information, just come at it from an angle of that aspect. I just would really appreciate that. And then if there's something that you would like for me to address in any particular future videos, which, I do want to talk about uniform commercial code a little bit in the future. I do want to talk about Roman civil code, civil law, the corpus juris, and whether or not that's been a part of the United States judicial system and things to that effect. I'd like to get into talk about definitions of words, because I have talked to a few attorneys, Dr. Graves, and mentioned things like Black Law's Dictionary and things to that effect. And a lot of what I've gotten from different attorneys is courts are not going to just automatically use a definition from a law dictionary, that they have to listen to the circumstances of the case. And based off the circumstances of the case, they can then try to define what is being said. And as an example, there's a legal term in Black Law's Dictionary, the word goat, G-O-A-T, and it means something to the effect of a sewer. Now, if I was to put in some sort of complaint about my neighbor's goat, an animal, destroying my property, and I want some sort of compensation for that harm, and I file a court case, a court is not going to assume that a sewer has somehow destroyed bit my fence and destroyed my property or something to that effect. They're not going to assume that. They're going to assume I'm talking about a four-legged animal that we recognize as a goat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the interests. That's where I think some future conversations about language and legalese, which I also feel like there is some trickery in that as well. But at the same time, it's not a be all end all. It's not everything in a court is defined by law dictionaries.
Well, all of this, if you read Charles Dickens, if you read Hard Times, you read Bleak House, you learn about the Jarndyce case, and you find out that lawyers they've done this for years. People say, well, what's an interrogatory? Ooh, it's too hard for me. It's an interrogatory. It's got too many syllables. Which just simply a written question that your opponent has to answer under oath in writing. Written question, they have to answer under oath in writing. Wow.
But that is a
Not
big
too
word.
tough. It's not too tough.
What was that word again?
Interrogatory.
Interrogatory.
Interrogatory. It's a written question that you get to serve on your opponent. He has to answer it under oath. He has to sign it and return it to you on a piece of paper under oath, answering these questions. It's not rocket science.
And it sounds like a variation of interrogation almost.
Well, it comes from the same thing, asking a question, rogatories. Okay. But it's not something an ordinary person can't understand.
If they're provided the tools, if
they have the course and understand what we're teaching. But then you see, what I want people to fully understand, sir, is that if a person doesn't answer that question under oath, there is a process, and there's a 3-step process. And when you do the 3-step process, that person who refused to answer under oath can sit in a jailhouse until he's ready to answer. And that power belongs to everybody who learns my course.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Graves, again, I really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I definitely look forward to more. I'll have links down below for everything we talked about. And again, if people are interested in signing up for the course, if you want to support what I'm doing here at Rice TVX and also support Dr. Graves and How to Win in Court, make sure you're using my referral link in the video description and the pinned comment. It would be greatly appreciated. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would like to add to today's video before we do wrap up, my friend?
Well, we'll say this in anticipation of people that might want to criticize me. Please tell me, anybody wants to tell me, why would we not want to learn the rules? Just tell me that. Why do we not want to learn the rules? When there's so much to be gained from knowing the rules and stopping these powerful people from running your life and your children's life into the ground.
Well said. Well, again, howtowinincourt.com. I appreciate you taking the time to do this conversation. Again, I am looking forward to more. And if you can just bear with me 1 second, just going to do the wrap up and stop recording. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not subscribed already. Again, smash that like button because it helps other people to be able to find these kind of videos in the YouTube algorithm flow and also to find Rice TVX. I'm going to leave you with this, as I like to leave you always, and that is to be a blessing to others because it always comes back around. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the change that you want to see in this world. Set that example. Practice change. Much love.